Hello, and welcome back. We're so delighted to be back with you on stage at the Mahaffey Theater after nearly 8 months away. I'm Ed Parsons, General Manager of the Florida Orchestra, and always a pleasure to have with us our music director, Michael Francis.
Hello, nice to see you. What a pleasure to be back.
Since we are socially distancing our orchestra and playing shorter concerts with no intermission, we're doing something a little different this season on our Masterworks weeks. In addition to our 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock performances, we'll be presenting 5 p.m. performances with slightly more unusual repertoire. Our 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock will be our standard fare, like our Beethoven Symphony No. 7 we have this week, but we get to be a little bit more creative with these 5 o'clock performances.
Yes, and we've called these Masterworks Soundwaves. I think obviously is a connection to the sea, but the idea of this being something new for you, but at the same time familiar. So these are more interesting. There'll be a few quirky surprises in there, and just a great way to explore a different variety of repertoire. Because once COVID happened and we cut down the concerts, we were conscious that we didn't want to give you less music. In fact, we're doing something very unusual. We're giving you more, and it's going to be very exciting. These are great concerts to enrich your vocabulary about the great repertoire that is out there. I assure you, you will not be bored. You'll have great fun. More light-hearted concerts in some ways, certainly more relaxed and very interesting.
And all of our concerts this weekend have a theme revolving around dance.
Yes, I wanted to start this weekend with dance because, as I mentioned for the pre-concert talk on the Masterworks, dance is probably the one thing we can't do right now. This is the most ancient form of social interaction and communication used in all cultures and all stages of history. As a way of bringing together in different rituals and celebrations, and a way for communities to come together. And sadly, dance can't happen, so I felt dance would be a great inspiration. And of course, the music is always rather uplifting.
Indeed. And we start our program with Scott Joplin's The Entertainer. This most famous of pieces was written by Scott Joplin in 1902 at the peak of the popularity of ragtime, known for its trademark syncopated or ragged rhythms. And as an aside, if you like ragtime music, you should definitely check out our first Pops concert of the season with Byron Stripling called Ragtime Masters. Now, Scott Joplin was widely considered the father of ragtime. He was born in Texas and spent much of his life in the Deep South before settling in Chicago. His father, a former slave from North Carolina, played the violin, and his mother, a freeborn woman from Kentucky, sang and played the banjo. He learned he first studied music with his parents and became very adept at the piano, which he often played in the large mansions in which his mother served as a maid. His music kind of fell out of fashion shortly after his death in 1916 as ragtime evolved into jazz. But it was in the early 1970s that ragtime had a major resurgence, in large part due to Marvin Hamlisch's score to the movie The Sting in 1973, which this piece was used as the main theme song.
Yes, and Joplin is such an important American composer because he was one of the great distillations of this tradition of this singing to each other, as he said, from his parents, the music from the slaves through, and now we have this sort of beautiful pre-jazz world. So of course it's so iconic, so recognized. As soon as you hear it, it'll become a marvelous earworm that will just stick in your mind forever because of course it is The Entertainer. Da-da-da-dum, ba-dum, da-da-da. We all know it very well.
And the next piece on our program is by Astor Piazzolla. It's his Serie del Angel. Astor Piazzolla was born in Mar del Plata, Argentina, and emigrated to New York as a child and grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. When he was just 8 years old, his father gifted him a bandoneon, an Argentinian version of an accordion. And that was a fateful day, as Piazzolla would use that bandoneon to change the conservative world of tango forever. He called his new form of music Nuevo Tango, and said that Nuevo Tango equaled tango plus tragedy plus comedy plus whorehouse. What we will hear on this week's program is a collection of 3 pieces called the Angel Series that he wrote for his Nuevo Tango group for a stage play called Tango del Angel. There are 3 movements, Muerte, or Death of the Angel, Milonga, or Dance of the Angel, and Resurrection of the Angel. And the version that we will hear tonight is for bassoon and strings, an arrangement by Argentinian composer Gabriel Senanes, and performed by our principal bassoonist, Josh Baker. And we have Josh on a video to play a little bit for you.
Oh, hello. Good evening. My name is Josh Baker, principal bassoonist of Your Florida Orchestra and soloist for this evening's concert. I will be playing Astor Piazzolla's Angel series, written in the 1960s for Rodriguez Munoz's play El Tango del Ángel. Piazzolla, known for innovating the tango, provides fresh rhythmic energy, passion, bravado, longing, and the art of romance. So please sit back, relax, and sanitize those hands, because it takes two to tango.
So tango is a fascinating music, and this concert we've called Legends from America, and it's the idea of North and South America, and both these continents inspiring us in music. And so I think tango is one of the most fascinating because we have this music which was formed in the Argentinian streets, but yet has African rhythms. It has a Sicilian-esque song pattern to it, played usually accompanied on the Spanish guitar and perfected on the German bandoneon. So this is sort of a real world music. And of course it's so magnificent in that desire to get you up and dancing. The dance itself, there's always a real seriousness, but of course a real, dare I say it, erotic quality to it, but at the same time evocative, full of great mood, emotion, and passion.
We follow that up with Marquez Danzon No. 4. So Arturo Marquez was the son of a mariachi musician and grandson of a Mexican folk singer. He was born in Mexico, but came to the United States as a teenager in the mid-1960s and settled with his family in Los Angeles. He came to fame with his whole series of compositions called Danzons, of which he wrote 9. The Danzon is the official dance of Cuba, but also popular in Puerto Rico and Veracruz, Mexico. There's always a driving rhythm blended with a sultry sensuality, and that is certainly the case with Marquez's Danzon No. 4.
Yes, I performed this recently, and what I really noticed was there's a great narrative. You'll hear all the instruments showing off with various solos as the strings then keep it going, and the bass and the percussion. But then if you really pay attention to what the clarinet does in particular during this, you'll see that they have a much more role of sort of desire to move forward, but then getting rejected and feeling on. It feels like we're watching a scene unfold before us in a dance club. Marvelous music, so brilliantly South American, such drive, such passion, such reflection, and all with that wonderful pulsating rhythm.
And we finish out our program with Copland's Appalachian Spring. Of course, we often play the large, full symphonic version of this work, but with our pared-down ensemble, we're able to bring to you the original instrumentation for 13 instruments. Now, this seminal work was commissioned in 1944 by Martha Graham. She had asked him to write a ballet with an American theme. When he finished, he simply called it Ballet for Martha. It was Graham that suggested the title Appalachian Spring, a phrase from a Hart Crane poem called The Dance. It later amused Copland tremendously that listeners would tell him how accurately he captured the beauty of Appalachia in his music, since the title was a complete afterthought. But it speaks to the genius of the composer who so eloquently captured the American spirit.
And this is an amazing piece because it was written, as Ed mentioned, in the height of the Second World War. And this composer, who was one of the great modernists, suddenly wrote music that was far more simple, but captured an American voice. In fact, I would say defined the American voice for an entire generation, and it won the Pulitzer Prize. And it really gave hope to a people as well. It drew attention to what is American, that sense of pioneering spirit, that simplicity, and of course that's what attracted him to the Shakers, the idea of a simple way of life, simple community coming together, but at the same time courage to go beyond into the Great West or wherever you would want to go. And the music at the very beginning of this has a beautiful openness and expanse. And in fact what you'll hear is the music which is a foretaste of the great melody we'll hear later. But then, and it's I would say Appalachian Spring, you could divide the suite into 8 episodes. So the first episode is this very gentle, open, wide prairie expanse with 2 chords coexisting on top of each other. The story of it is about a marriage of a bride and a groom, and how the community come together. There's a dance, there's a warning from someone, and basically about them leaving their parents, going forth into life and into marriage. Really almost a non-story, but what matters is that sense of space. In the second episode, we hear now the entrance of the bride, and the bride is the star of this, and you can hear this in the music. There's a tremendous vibrancy and confidence to the writing. This is a live performance, and this is with the full orchestral suite that you're hearing, so you can hear a little bit of coughing going on. Obviously with masks, we won't have that under COVID conditions, and we will be performing in the original instrumentation, which is for 13 instruments, so it's smaller, but that was how Copland originally designed it. In the next episode, this is a pas de deux, or a duet between the bride and the groom. And you'll notice again that the bride has more confidence in her writing, and when you hear the groom at the beginning, he's a little awkward. The music goes between 2, between 5, as he's trying to find his way. Romance isn't natural to him at this stage, whereas for her, she's probably been thinking about it for more years than he had. This melody here, this is the love theme, or the chorale, sometimes called the psalm theme, and this is her trying to calm him, and he continues. And this wonderful scene that goes on in the music in between how they sort of interact is very, very powerful. Thank you. The next episode, then we come to the great barn dance, and this is where you feel Copland's ability to assimilate and, in fact, create the American language. This really does feel like music you would hear in any Western movie. The cowboy, the ultimate expression of American freedom and exploration and adventure. And the music has a brilliant vibrancy to it. Feel, and of course he'd written Billy the Kid and Rodeo, these ballets about the cowboy beforehand, and you sense that in the music. In the next episode, this is the 5th episode, this is the bride's big solo, and we have to talk about Martha Graham, who was one of the greatest choreographers and dancers of the last century. She lived until she was in her 90s. She danced this particular role in her early 60s. She had a very angular style of dancing. In fact, someone said it's more akin to modern break dancing than it is to modern ballet. And the way that she approached this with this confidence about the woman being the center of this and her particular dance is captured in the way that Copland does. You can hear these angular and sort of dynamic, chromatic and cross rhythms going on. She goes. The next episode is the shortest one, and this is a transition, and again you'll hear that love theme come back, this time on the flute. Flute in the original. Oboe here. You might be thinking, is that conductor, can he hear it? That's an oboe and a violin, but in the original orchestration, you'll hear the flute. And then we reach the most famous moment of this, and this is the Shaker Melody's Simple Gifts. And this, I think, what attracted Copland to this group, and Copland was an atheist, or well, certainly agnostic, but he was very attracted to the Christian sect of Shaker people because of that sense of purity, that sense of earnestness and honesty and hard work and physically building things, and as well as building community. And of course, this melody is one of the great moments we can hear in this piece. And then that grows into a series of variations. In fact, one of them is almost a clarion cry for peace to the nation. And just after it has my favorite moment, which he's described in the music as like a prayer, the 8th episode. And in this episode, the music feels more like a Baptist hymnal, one of gratitude, one of peace, one of temperance, and one of quiet fortitude. And at the end of this piece, you'll just hear these 3 notes on the flute, and the chord that doesn't settle. There's 2 chords together. There's 2 major chords on top of each other, like the bride and the groom haven't quite come together yet, and they're just preparing for life on their own. What Copland achieved in this short ballet is quite remarkable. He wrote a wonderful ballet with some of the greatest music ever written, but at the same time he captured the vast open landscape of this great continent as well as country. But he gave identity to a nation by steeping the music in the ideals of optimism, traditional values, family, community, boldness, simplicity, and integrity. And he sort of managed to capture the American way into music, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In essence, he created and he defined the American sound, and he gave a voice to a people at the time they desperately needed it during the Second World War. He felt the role of an artist was to make society better, to make it bigger, to make it more unified. And in this piece, he's seeking to do that. And that's what he felt was so important, and I think he achieved it. Wonderful music, full of dance. And this concert will also have a couple of surprises that we haven't mentioned that I encourage you to come and see, that hopefully will be memorable for the right reasons as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.